My name is Quina Makwitswan Akwitanai, or in the world that we live in, Troy. I'm one of the founders of SIA, and we have a program that we created was benefit honoring. We found that the psychedelic world didn't have access to giving back to indigenous people through the Nagoya Protocols, which is an international treaty. And so we created that, an access point for business and private people to give back in that industry. And then as we go, other companies that aren't even industry can be part of it.
Is this modeled after anything else?
It is not. It's sitting with the indigenous elders. This is what we come up with because there was benefit sharing and all these things of what they say is reciprocity. But reciprocity isn't like a real thing, indigenous people. That's what a word that white people came up with and society came up with. That's not who we are. And so we sat down with it and found out what was comfortable for us. And what we do every day, all day, is we honor things. So having benefit honoring was who we were and coming from us. So we decided to give an access to this outside world to us by giving back to us for using our substances and our ways in this way. And in that way, their businesses can sell all over the world since there's 192 countries that are signatories of this international treaty. Now America and Canada aren't part of that, but if you start a company and you're going to use a botanical substance that indigenous people used, you'll only be able to sell it in America and Canada, and we're a world market. So if you give back to benefit honoring as the access point that we give to you, you can sell your wares. If you give back up to us through benefit honoring, you can sell your wares around the world because you have verified financial proof that you gave back to the original caretakers.
Okay. Fine, I'm going to have you tell me that again as a second take, but you don't have to say the same exact thing.
Yeah, well, don't worry, I'm Indian, so I won't.
You are?
I'm Troy. I'm founder of SIA, and we're here to bring you access point to give back through benefit honoring. So pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies that are using resources from indigenous people can sell their wares around the world.
Do many companies use products from indigenous people?
Yeah, it's been going on for...
They won't hear my question, so you can answer it. Yeah?
Yes, they've always used lots of those, but there's never been a way to give back, and there also hasn't been the lever to hold them accountable. And so that's what we're creating with a verified financial outcome.
SIA, what is SIA?
SIA means feather in Comanche, and it's the mother church of the Native American Church of the Comanches.
And did you start this, or a group of you, or your
tribe? Me and my partner, William Volker, started this.
Okay. Will he be here too?
He won't be here.
Okay.
No. I wouldn't want to get my buddy dirty.
Let's see, right here.
Yeah, my tribe has sent me out to deal with this world.
And how is it you ended up here at District 216?
I met Eric at another lecture I was doing in Vegas, and we kind of hit it off. And one of the things that they think is very important here is the education of this new lens and this new world that we're coming into, and that's what I believe in. And so I thought we were in alignment, so here we are.
How would you describe this new world?
A new world where people give back and share instead of being greedy bastards.
And is that an indigenous way of doing things?
Yeah. You strengthen your community by giving back and not just filling your pockets. So I've done this work that I'm doing right now for 44 years, and I've never been paid. So me and my partner's whole life has been dedicated to this piece.
How do you make a living?
We live within SIA. It's kind of like an indigenous monastery. And we take care of, we have the largest eagle collection in the Western Hemisphere. I've got 140 eagles on my place. And we breed them, and we run the only tribal feather repository in the United States. So all 574 tribes can get feathers from us for their ceremonies to keep their sovereignty alive.
I don't know where to go next.
Yeah, didn't know what you were getting into, did you? I'll take you down the road.
Okay, take me a little more.
You know, which part do you want to hear about? I mean, we could,
Well-
we take care of material culture, we take care of documents. We've got 500,000 pages of documents.
What are the documents about?
Unpublished documents from the Spanish and in Spain and in Mexico that write about Comanches and their culture and things in the early times that most people weren't taking records on. And then we have 5,000 photographs from glass plate negatives that started in the mid-1800s to the first generation of Comanches, so the early 1920s. And then we have a recording section where all our songs and stories within the recordings. And then we have a material culture section, which is all the bead patterns, the lances, the bows, the staffs, all the pieces that it takes to do the culture and the sacred bead patterns and sacred geometry. And then all the sacred places that we care for, and the botanical wildcrafting that we go and collect the botanicals for the ceremonials and the healing aspect of it. And then we see it as also on a sacred site where the beginning Native American church ceremonies began. And so we caretake that and many sacred sites in what they call Comancheria, which is our historic range.
Tell me again the name of your tribe.
The Comanche, the Numina. Comanche is what the outside world calls us. Numina is what we call ourselves.
What's the Comanches' history with psychedelics?
They're the place where peyote lives. And
What do you mean they're the place?
Comancheria is the only place in the United States where peyote lives. So,
Where is that?
Southwest Texas. And so the Native American church, which is the only intertribal religion in the United States, came through the Comanches. And Quanah Parker spread it throughout all the tribes. So now it's the only intertribal religion in the United States.
And what are the benefits from peyote?
Comanche way, it strengthens the warrior spirit to where it makes you strong and powerful and one with yourself, which translates when everybody has that for themselves and they bond together, it's immutable force.
And how about people who aren't Comanches in Southern California? Do you think they would benefit from it?
Hell no, I don't really care. You ask. No, my grandmother always said to us, she said it's for everybody. So I'm here in a place that's decently progressive and bringing the message and the way for people not only to do peyote, but to give back benefits to their companies or tithing their own what they make. And by doing that, I'm giving them access to the healing that they don't know they need.
And for those that don't know, how can healing come about from using peyote? What type of healing? Like emotional, psychological?
Yeah, it's deep. It's like layers and layers of the healing. It's spiritual, it's psychological, it's trauma. You can heal the trauma. And in our society, you know, I was born as a white person, but was taken in as the Comanches as the last captive when I was a teenager. And so for the last 44 years, I've lived with the Comanches, and that they made me a priest about 7 years ago. So I'm the first person ever born outside the tribe to become a priest within the tribe.
Wow.
And so the white side has trauma, they just don't know it because they live in our society that's got lots of trauma. It's based on money, not based on your neighbor or your community or the people or the animals or the earth, based on climate change. You can see how that's working. And the indigenous people work in concert with everything. They don't move someplace and take everything you can and then move someplace else. They live where these sacred places are and live in balance with nature all their lives. And when they leave and the next generation comes, it's still in balance. So they have the secrets to the kingdom to change the world that we've messed up.
And tell me once again, it's even hard to remember the name. Donation following, no.
Benefit honoring.
Benefit honoring. Is benefit honoring a term for a lot of different groups that use it, or just your group?
All the other things that were done with reciprocity were done from the outside world. And it's about giving back to the indigenous world. But it wasn't made by us. So
The peyote?
no, the benefit sharing and all the things in reciprocity in business world, they weren't made by the people that are getting that. So we're changing that and making it where this is from us. This is who we are. This is what we made. This is how we honor. This is what we do. So we're giving the chance for the outside world to have a little bit of culture and follow and support that, so we can support the lands on earth and do the conservation that it takes in the Amazon, because we live close to that. Conservation that happens from schooling and all that other stuff, that's a certain type of conservation, but those people don't live in those realms and take care of it on these deep spiritual places. Indigenous people live there and they have these deep cultural ways. And so this gives the outside world a chance to support them, so they can do land buybacks, so they can do assessments of plant species, so they can do all the things they need for their deep, rich kinds of conservation. Because we just can't do it like that. We're not equipped.
And so how does it work again if a pharmaceutical company, is it just for pharmaceutical companies or for what?
No, it can be anybody. So if you're using something, say you're using MDMA or you're using what's that other word? What you got with you? Ketamine. So if you're using MDMA and you got ketamine, so that's a 4% from your company. If you're using the botanical, peyote, ayahuasca, psilocybin, ibogaine, then you give back a bare minimum of 8% of your company.
Wow.
If your company goes above $1 billion, then you're switched into a 10%, between 10 and 20%, and it's either a trust in America or in Europe it's a foundation. They don't do trusts in Europe. And then there's a 32%, which is pure cultural, and then there's a 44%, which has to do with land buybacks.
Wow. Have any companies signed on for it yet?
Yeah, we've got just yesterday, we got a 44%. From a new company, and we have a biotech company that's going to give back 32%. We have a company in Switzerland that's going to give back 20%. We have another pharmaceutical company that's going to give back 10%. So and we have companies outside the psychedelic industry that are also giving. So I don't want to limit it to psychedelic. It's just the Nagoya Protocols is made to match plants in ways that are taken from indigenous people through international treaty to do it. And so this kind of gives the access and the teeth kind of to it, the lever action to do it. But I want to do it with all businesses to give back, because the climate change and the conservation that indigenous people doing is much richer and deeper. And so I'm not limiting it to psychedelic industry, we're just starting it here.
And how is it that District 216 can help you?
I think that education is really important to them. And
Could you say education is important to District 216?
yeah, education is important to District 216, and we want to change hearts and minds.
And so they made this an opportunity for you to share what you're doing to others, right?
Mm-hmm,
Can you
yeah.
tell me that?
Well, they asked us to come out here, and Comanches do everything in 4. So we had 4 people sharing in completely different realms of benefit honoring. So there was a wider scope educationally for people to get it. And we've done this for a while this way, and sometimes we change our speakers in different parts in different places, but it's been a really good way to really get everybody onboarded to thinking that way and coming across that way. And being that the people believe here in that psychedelic space, they've already done psychedelics where it kills the ego mind and starts allowing your inner true spirit, which where indigenous people live, to come forth and make truer decisions for everybody.
You say they've done that already?
Well, anybody that's done psychedelics has had a lot of a breakdown of the ego mind.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. So that's one of the things, the benefits of psychedelics.
Yes,
Can
yes.
you say that again?
When you finally get to a point,
And move slightly that way, yeah. I'm going to focus on you again. You were saying?
we have a certain knowledge base and an ego place that our society comes from, and it creates a lot of, disease. And when you let go of that, then it changes your view, your vision, what you do, your actions. And so when you're in the middle of a peak experience, you understand that there's something greater than the things that you've been taught and the things that society are trying to get you to do all your life. And so it breaks down that ego mind part and allows you to make that truer self, holistic decision that impacts everyone instead of just you and your pocketbook.
That's cool. And when you were talking about when someone's taking peyote, I think, how did you put it at a good space or something? But can you say when people ingest peyote or take peyote, they get this benefit? Because if I can just edit in the word peyote so that listeners will know.
Okay.
Hold on a sec. Yes.
So when you take peyote, or what we call husi, in a ceremonial setting, that allows you to let down what you think you're carrying and go into a safe space that's sacred and ancient and bring this other thing forward in a space that allows you to do that. So when you come out, a lot of that carries with you.
Well, to wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Ariel is badass.
What would you want people to know? Maybe
the world is having a hard time. And we live here. And let's take care of it. And us as indigenous people, even though we've been traumatized by this society, we have chosen to create a space that gives you access for you to heal.
And you've done that by providing peyote and providing...
Providing benefit honoring, an access point. The peyote does its own thing, but by giving back, the action of giving back and letting go and control, that will give something to you that I hope you get to experience.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And can we use this here at
Yeah.
216?
Yeah.
So, they won't hear my voice, but tell me who you are and who you're representing today. And you can look at me.
Okay. My name is Ariel Clark. I am a human being who practices law. I come to this as an Indigenous person. I'm mixed. I'm half French and half Odawa Anishinaabe from the Grand Traverse Band. And I come to this work because I have a deep dedication to my community, meaning the world community, a place where we all are able to belong with the plants and the animals and the trees. And I have a deep care for the plants that are healing us and for the lineages that have stewarded those plants. And I also have a deep care for so many brothers and sisters on the planet from all four of the directions who are suffering. And so, I see this psychedelic resurgence as an opportunity for deep healing that our planet needs and that we all need. So I bring my tools as a lawyer. I've been an attorney for 17 years, and as someone deeply engaged in policy reform on issues related to Indigenous people, drug policy, plants, to...
What are some of the legal issues? Is it First Amendment or?
In terms of with psychedelics?
Yeah.
Oh, there are literally, psychedelics involves so many different areas of law and intersecting points. It involves healthcare, criminal justice, business, international law, environmental issues. I mean, I could go on. It's tremendous. And actually, it's also tremendous because the worldviews, the cross-cultural dialogue that necessarily is happening, like what we're talking about tonight with benefit honoring. This is a conversation between the Western psychedelic, what they call the Renaissance, and with regard to especially what are keystone medicines, so mushrooms, ayahuasca, peyote, iboga, toad, and Indigenous people who have stewarded these medicines around the globe for time immemorial, where this isn't a renaissance, where these are sacred ways and medicines. These two cultures are converging. And so we have this moment, again, like we do in so many other moments, to think about how we want to be in relationship to each other. And it's a question, I wonder it very much. What will the West do in this moment? Will the West replicate the colonial taking culture, just sort of like one-sided taking? Oh, we found this thing, we like this thing, we're having this psychedelic renaissance, we're gonna take this thing in the same way, we're gonna commodify it. We're gonna have our branding and our influencers and all the things, but in a way that is tremendously imbalanced and only for accumulation of wealth and for selling things. And yeah, maybe you're selling health, but like, what is it deeper? Where, like when we really deepen in our lives and in our spiritual practices, we see that there's a wide variety of what health means. And so it is health, delivering healthcare, accessible, culturally appropriate healthcare for people who need help, and also though delivering it in a good way. So from companies, from people, from leaders that see a broader view of wellness, the wellness of our planet, the wellness of being in right relationship. So not only from a taking lens, but from a generative and giving and regenerative way of being.
How does benefit honoring work?
Well, so it's interesting because we have the world with so many so many countries and so many different laws, and we have international laws and international treaties. In the United States, we tend to be behind the international community on a lot of issues. And the same can be said for instances when a person, whether it's a company, a researcher, someone who wants to commercialize a plant or an animal or another genetic resources, goes into another country or a local community or an indigenous community. Like, let's give an example of a cosmetic company. This happens all the time. Natura & Company is the biggest B corporation on the globe. They're a tremendously successful cosmetic company that for decades have interacted with indigenous communities, including in the Amazon, to seek consent before accessing the plants that might have anti-wrinkle value or whatever the different values are, and go through, and this is actually an internationally prescribed process. There was a treaty over 30 years ago called the Convention on Biological Diversity that nearly all of the countries globally are parties to. And it's about sustainability and conservation of genetic resources, and it's also about access and benefit sharing. So when you have parties that are in that, I want to access this resource to put it in this cosmetic for commercialization, there's an actual horizontal negotiation, and the access is provided freely with free, it's a term of art, a legal term of art, free, prior, and informed consent is given before taking that genetic resource so that these colonial ways aren't replicated. That was 30 years ago, this treaty passed. And you have most countries internationally that have also signed the Nagoya Protocol, which is a subsequent treaty which creates a very robust regulatory framework for access and benefit sharing. And you'll notice that phrase, benefit sharing, that is somewhat similar to benefit honoring. But as Troy has explained, benefit sharing comes from Western legal jurisprudence, right? That comes from the Western lens. Benefit honoring is coming from an indigenous lens because it acknowledges the sacredness. It's not just about sharing, it's honoring, deeply honoring. And it's, we're in this moment really globally, in this moment of a tremendous inflection point. Mental health, ecological crisis, so many people suffering. And I have my own story of suffering, as do so many other people, And these medicines are really such beautiful tools and can heal us so tremendously. But again, what kind of healing do we want to have? Do we want to replicate the same way where we take at the expense of others? Do we want to really deepen into a wiser path and a way of being where we really learn to be in healthy relationship with each other? Truly, I feel like if we don't shift to that healthy way of being in relationship, we maybe will not be on this planet too much longer. And I'm so sorry for, what has been done, and I hope very much that we can undo it enough to find a place where we really are able to live in a harmonious way with each other and the earth.
What do you think about being here at District 216? Do you appreciate the opportunity to spread your message and the whole?
I'm thrilled to be here at District 216. This place is amazing. This is beautiful community. I've heard so much about it. This is my first time actually being here, but I've seen so many pictures, and I feel very honored to be here because I see that this is an intentional gathering of people, human beings, around plants, around art, around music, around community. And it's about sharing space together and learning and, just really building relationship. I keep talking about relationship. That's what we need, is this loving connection. And so it feels like a space to nurture loving connection, to explore different ideas and hopefully deepen into things that are true and deepen in ways that we can, again, walk a more healed path each day of our lives.
Nice. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on the subject? Well, let me think of one more question.
Okay.
Actually, do you want to share at all the suffering you've had personally? Or
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
We've learned a lot about trauma over the last decades. That was not a word that was in the lexicon, certainly when I was young. And we've also learned a lot about epigenetic inherited trauma, even in just subsequent generations, and about different communities around the globe who have suffered from difficult experiences. And I'm sort of the camp that most people on the planet have or are experiencing some sort of trauma just because there's so much right now. This inflection point. And I mentioned earlier that I'm Anishinaabe from the Grand Traverse Band. And there's a thing that is true in the Native American community on Turtle Island and in the United States, and certainly in my family, where there's something that's called Native American ancestral trauma. And so Native people have much higher rates than pretty much anyone else in diabetes, suicide, drug and alcohol use disorder, chronic pain. I could go on and on, It's from being part of a community where we've been experiencing 530 years of colonization, and we are not in a country that wants to have a process of reconciliation around it, whereas Canada is going through that process. We need to do that in this country. And that would help all of our healing processes. So basically, I felt when I was born, this sounds kind of wild, but I felt like I was born with a broken heart, and I was sad and had terrible depression and anxiety and alcohol and drug use disorder and horrible chronic pain. I couldn't walk for 5 years, and I had debilitating nightmares several times a week. And it was really hard for a really long time. And it was these keystone medicines, these medicines from the earth, from the plants and the animals and indigenous people and prayers that saved my life and healed my legs. That happened, my legs were healed 3.5 years ago. And so I think every day how I can be in more service for everything that I have been given and continue to receive. And the more I give, really, the more I hold the prayer deeper in my heart, how can I be in more service? The more meaningful and abundant my life becomes.
Very nice. Can I ask you which natural plants you use?
Well, I actually like to think about my relationship with plants instead of using or taking, being in relationship to them, being in prayer with them, because they are our relatives, they're our kin. Like truly from an indigenous worldview, I can say from my tribe, from an Anishinaabe worldview, the plants and the animals are our relatives. And these sacred plants are also our relatives and our kin and our teachers and our doctors, depending on what indigenous community. So I have prayed with peyote, and I have prayed deeply with psilocybin mushrooms, and as well as toad, as well as iboga, as well as ayahuasca. And so, I had different times in my path studied or deeply with different of these medicines and ways. And it was through dieting certain master plants in the jungle, these two plants that are called Renikia and Chuchuwasi, and then drinking ayahuasca every other night for a month, that allowed a lot to come out, and for my heart to be healed and my legs to be healed, for me to leave there walking.
Well, I'm glad it helped you, and it's a good story to share with others.
Yeah.
Okay, well, excellent interview. Anything else you want to say? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Can District 216 use this?
Of course.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
100%.
We love you.
Is what Benefit Honor is going to do,
Yeah.
then you can sell in all 192 countries around the world.
That's excellent.
So it's good business, and it heals you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
heals
Set
your
these
soul
up
from
and
your
then build
ancestors
business.
and their bad deeds.
That's excellent.
At the same time.
That's great that there's a
Hey,
Thank you, everybody. So you have been being seated by Ariel and by Troy. And I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and making space to hear about other people's culture and lineage. It's a